mortality rate from Burkitt's lymphoma.
Wow.
What is the lymphoma?
It's just a nasty kind of lymphoma that's been associated with EBV for years, and the CDC was very well aware of this. So when they saw people with a chronic form of EBV not getting better, they were anticipating that a lot of people were going to get this cancer, and it scared them. So when it turned out that people with chronic fluctuating levels of EBV weren't necessarily getting cancer, I guess they were delighted because it let them off the hook. So they pretty much ceased their investigations.
So now it's been 1985. So it has been 15, how many years are we talking?
30 some odd years.
30 some odd years from now. And so in that time, 30 years of time passed. So what's happened since then on finding out the root cause?
Nothing.
But it may not have been official researchers, but now let's go to Erik's story. So in the last 30 some odd years, now after you've had all this time to think about it and study and read every book you can get your hands on and understand what it is, what do you think the root cause was of this particular North Lake Tahoe problem that caused the CFS or the ME? What was it?
Well,
do they know yet? Do you have an inkling?
I have my own ideas. I made my own observations, such as the fact that all the clusters of illness were happening in moldy buildings. And almost all the clusters, one exception. I thought if mold, whatever's in these moldy buildings, has such an effect that it makes the difference between turning into a chronic form of the illness or recovery, that means the mold qualifies as a cofactor.
Sure.
It's not just a mere trigger, it's not just some random thing. It was critical in the development of the cluster form of the illness. So my first question was, if it made that much of a difference for clusters, what about all these individual cases? Could it be possible that they're just people that encountered mold by themselves and it wasn't noticed because there wasn't enough follow-up to make that correlation? So I started asking them if they had problems with mold, and every one of them had a mold story for me.
So you went and interviewed these people?
Yeah.
How many of the 160?
Oh gosh.
Well, there's 1/3 of them gone.
But it doesn't mean they died of the cancer.
Yeah, we've had more people die of suicide than cancer.
So what percentage of those 160 are still around? Just of that number. I know there was thousands of cases, but just of the ones that are of the same two doctors.
Dr. Peterson said a few years ago that he still has kept track of 80% of the original 160. And that's how he knows how many have cancer. So,
Seems to me like it'd be a great opportunity to go, whoever would be willing of those 160, or the 80% of the 160, would be an interesting story for a newspaper to go and look into.
I thought so, sure.
That seems like a great idea.
Yeah, I've approached hundreds of journalists. It's like, here's a story. I mean, this is a career-making story. You could unveil information about the chronic fatigue syndrome that nobody knows. I thought any journalist would jump on a chance like that.
It would be super interesting to see how many of those people are well today.
Oh, of the
Well, things have
160?
changed.
None.
None?
None.
They're all still doing
sick?
horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Peterson is on record as saying there's not been a single person who has returned to normal.
Well, so if it was mold,
But you said it's algae and mold, didn't you? There was an algae plume.
Yeah, I said that.
So, because everyone's in mold. I've come to realize that. We went and looked at 60 homes, okay, and there's only a
60
handful of
homes.
them.
Mind you, in North Las Vegas, in one of the highest areas in Vegas, and out of 60 of them, what did you find 4? Where you could walk into, after we had narrowed it down.
That were okay. So everyone's in mold, Eric. So what's so special? Something else had to have happened at that time, because then it ended. So if it was the buildings alone, people would have continued to get sick, and we would have more and more people over the years continue. But
that's exactly what Dr. Elizabeth Unger said to me. Dr. Unger, chief of CDC investigations into chronic fatigue syndrome.
yeah.
That's exactly what she said.
And what did you say?
Because that makes sense.
Yeah,
That's a reasonable thought.
that's a perfectly reasonable thought. I mean, that's the best question in the world.